Hi, I'm Teresa DeMars with the Rice Soil and Water Conservation District, and I'm here today to talk to you about careers in conservation. So let's get started. If you like to work outdoors, care about the environment, or are interested in the fields of agriculture or natural resources, a career in conservation might be just for you. Before we learn more about some of the job opportunities that you can find with conservation districts, I'd like to talk a little bit first about what conservation is. If you look at the two fields in the following pictures, you'll notice that field number 2 has some erosion happening. This is gully erosion. The soil's been carried away and it's getting into our rivers, lakes, and streams, and we really want to prevent this. In field number 1, we have several conservation practices that are protecting the land. In this instance, those practices are conservation tillage and cover crops. These practices protect the soil and keep it anchored so that it doesn't wash away. Conservation has a great history here in Minnesota and across the United States. Agriculture expanded in the U.S. in the 1920s due to the invention of the tractor. Farmers plowed land in the Great Plains that had never been farmed before. In the 1930s, extreme drought and heat hit the Great Plains and led to the Dust Bowl. Winds swept across the land, leading to soil erosion and massive dust storms, which damaged millions of acres. As a result, President Roosevelt wrote to governors across the United States and asked them to create locally led conservation districts to assist farmers with putting conservation on the land to prevent erosion. Minnesota has 89 soil and water conservation districts, or SWCDs. We are considered a local unit of government, similar to a city or a county. Our boundaries of the area we serve is also the same as county governments. Across the United States, there are nearly 3,000 conservation districts. So if you would like to work for this type of organization, you can find similar jobs throughout the United States. Here's a chart that shows some of the positions available with SWCDs. The salary ranges correspond to positions in southern Minnesota. The administrative assistant position handles payroll, pays the bills, and basically does accounting for the district. The conservation technician and resource specialist positions meet with landowners to assess the conservation needs out in the field and to help develop a plan to determine what conservation practices are needed for the site. My position in outreach in education is to help educate the public by writing articles for newspapers and for our blog. I also maintain our website and social media accounts. I help to organize events and provide education about conservation to area schools. The district manager supervises all the employees for SWCDs and also manages the conservation programs for the district. Civil or agricultural engineers help to survey and design some of the conservation practices that require construction. Most of the positions require a Bachelor of Science degree, except for the administrative assistants, which usually requires a 2-year degree in business management or equivalent experience. The cool thing about conservation is that you can major and minor in several different areas and be eligible for positions in conservation. So soil science, forestry, agronomy, environmental studies, rangeland management, conservation biology, there's many different majors that you can do. If we look at our color wheel, you'll see that most of the careers in conservation lie in the green area in agriculture, food, and natural resources. The administrative assistant position comes out of the yellow area, And thirdly, the engineering position comes out of the orange area. Engineering, manufacturing, and technology. So there's lots of different pathways you can take for a career in conservation. Let's go out to the field now and follow our district technician, Emmy Peters, as she looks over an erosion problem in a field and determines what conservation practice will help fix the problem.
Hi, my name is Emmy Peters and I work for the Rice Soil and Water Conservation District. I have been here currently 3 years and I am the district technician in charge of all the engineering, fieldwork, erosion stuff. Before that, I grew up in Faribault and attended Faribault High School. And then I graduated from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities in forestry, soil resources, urban forestry, and environmental science, where I then went to Noble Soil and Water, which is way southern Minnesota, for 2.5 years before I came here. Today we are here surveying this site. A landowner contacted us that there's an erosion issue. Most of the erosion issue, if you can't see, is not really on his site, it's below on another landowner's, but in order to stop the erosion, we have to catch it before it starts eroding, and that water kind of picks up and takes speed. Gully erosion usually occurs as a form of the landscape. As you see, all this water is coming in quickly at one spot when we get those heavy rainfalls, especially with exposed soil here. It all just kind of picks up and then it takes and makes its own little path, which we start having this gully and it starts taking the soil downstream. So this is what we're trying to fix, and as you can see, this is about 2 feet deep on me here. So I mean, this isn't good, especially, all this soil is going somewhere where it shouldn't be, and soil is valuable to a farmer and you don't want to lose it from your site. You can't get it back. And two, then it's also harmful for your equipment. You can see right here, they farmed through it for the most part, but if you look downstream here, they can't farm through it. They're losing land, they're losing, productivity, and like I said, the soil is just something you're never going to get back. So on this site today, we surveyed this whole site with our GPS equipment. With that equipment, we can get to 1,000th of a foot. We use satellites, and then we can bring it into our modeling systems in the office and get a design from that. So for this site, we'll probably need basins to fix it. There's 2 different types of conservation practices that are common in the area here, which are basins and waterways. Waterways take more water. Usually we do flatter landscapes, bigger watersheds, versus basins. We can usually do 20 acres or below of water. We can take into those. We also need hills to tie into those. So this is the perfect site for that, because there's 2 big hills here. So a basin would basically be across a structure of pretty much clay and dirt across that catches that water into this orange intake that sticks up and goes underground into tile, which looks like this. There's lots of different tile. You see there is stuff like this one has holes in it, so that's called perforated to let the water in, versus non-perf doesn't let the water in at all once it's in there from the intake. And then there's dual wall, which is smooth, because you see this regular PVC, this has ridges on it. Dual wall smooth, it makes the water go faster. So those are some of the different types we have. So this tile then goes underground, takes the water and takes it to a stable outlet. For example, like a stream, like a wetland, somewhere where it's not going to erode at all versus in the field. This here is our surveying equipment we use. It's called an R10 Trimble unit. It's a GPS unit that works off satellites, and then it takes the shots and ties them into the ground off the base stations, which the Minnesota MinCorp has. So they update those. Those are set stations that they have that we will tie into to make sure it's always on level. So after I survey today, in the future, if I come out for a project, I can go right to these shots that I take, and it'll give me right that location and height, and then I can flag it in the future instead of flagging it every single time I'm out here. In order to use it, you can set it up. You have codes and everything, and then you just go to your spot and press a button, and it'll take your shot for you. Another type of common erosion that you'll see on sites is both sheet and rill, where the water on the surface just takes the whole top of the surface off. In order to fix that, there's two common ways. It's both cover crops and no-till, which this site demonstrates both of them. You see here, even though it's past the growing season, everything else is brown, we have these cover crops growing. These grow, usually they're flown on in August or even interseed earlier in the year, and they help keep the soil in place when there's no crop or anything else protecting it. Along with no-till, if you see here, there's still stalks and everything in place. Those help keep the soil in place also versus disturbing them and then leaving it exposed for all that moisture, especially in April when you have a lot of snow melt taking the soil off. It'll keep it nice in place for the farmer.
The Rice SWCD wishes you luck as you determine your future career goals. For more information about conservation, visit our website at www.riceswcd.org.